Сайн байцгаана уу хүн түзэгчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай Defacto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Тогтвортой Ноолуурын олон улсын эвсэл төрийн бус байгууллагын төлөөлөн удирдах зөвлөлийн дарга ноён Чарлес Хабард оролцож байна.
Чарлес Хабард Тогтвортой Ноолуурын эвсэл төрийн бус байгууллагын дарга. Чарлес Хабард нь англи төвтэй Тогтвортой Ноолуурын эвслийн даргаар ажилладаг. Энэхүү байгууллага Ноолуурын хэдийн төлөв, бэлчээр болон малчтын амжиргааг хамгаалахад чиглэсэн үйл ажиллагаа явуулдаг олон улсын буйны байгууллага юм. Тэрээр өмнө нь талх нарийн боов нефтийн салбарт удирдах төвшөнд ажиллаж байсан ба чадваржуулах хөтөлбөрөөр мэргэжсэн. Тогтвортой Ноолуурын эвслийн хийж байгаа ажил нь түүний амьдралд авч байгаа хамгийн сэтгэл ханамж, тааламжтай мэдрэмжийг төрүүлдэг хэмээн Чарлес Хабард тодтогдог.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please tell us about the organizations. What is that about?
The Sustainable Fibre Alliance was actually an initiative by a lady from Mongolia, Una Jones, who is now our CEO. She was born in Selenge and was educated here in Mongolia, but also then went to the UK to continue her studies. Whilst there, she sort of was able to make connections because she was in Manchester, and Manchester is is one of the centres of sort of fashion and textile designs in the UK. It was through those connections and work that was being done here in Mongolia on environmental issues that she realised that there could be some sort of connection. And she was able to persuade some of the leading brands in the UK to think about the future of cashmere and how we might find a way of ensuring that it was going to be there in the longer term. It was not an easy thing to do. There was a willingness from some of the UK brands because they recognise that cashmere is a luxury product and there will always be a demand from it. However, there are issues around cashmere, particularly its long-term sustainability because of the impact that climate change and other issues are having on the grassland. And without sorting that out, the future for cashmere could be quite severe. So this prompted her to have this vision of what could happen if brands could collaborate, if we could get the herders involved, then perhaps there was some sort of action that could be done on the ground. So it was really an initiative that came out of her knowledge of the country and the countryside, her passion for wanting to do something for her country, and also the fact that she was able to persuade some leading brands in the UK, Johnson's of Elgin, Burberry. Those brands were there to sort of support her in getting the whole thing off the ground. So it really was a strongly led Mongolian initiative.
So what's happening under this initiative?
The initiative really is about trying to encourage partnerships between the various agencies that are already running in Mongolia. There's been a lot of programs of work that sort of peter out and then they come back again, and there's no continuity. The one thing that our program seeks to do, or our message is really, we're supported by brands and retail who see a future for cashmere, and therefore we've got that backing, and our interventions are not aimed at trying to reverse what's happening there. It's about education. It's about recognition that if you're going to have a future cashmere industry, the industry has got to help itself. And that starts on the ground. That starts on the ground with the herders.
So let's talk in that way. Yes, cashmere is there. It's luxury good. And half of the world cashmere is supplied from Mongolia, and those cashmere from the back of their goats make their road to processing several layers of processing. At the end, it comes as a final product with a big name, brands, to people who can buy it expensive. And nothing can replace cashmere. So, but however, the consumers, the luxury goods, they would like to know that cashmere is coming on the sustainable way, in the right way, not much making suffering the animals, quality is there. All these concerns brought all together everybody to the board, right, to the table. Mm-hmm. And now what's the major concerns you would like to address?
I think the major concerns that we have, and certainly what our brands tell us, is the issue of quality. The shift from sort of quality products maybe 10 or 20 years ago, where the micron could be measured quite fine coming out of Mongolia, we're now seeing it shift from quality to volume. And that's because the price point that cashmere can get drives the market. And because it's a major source of income for herders, they are looking for the best price. And today that means volume. We would like to see that price being more reflective of quality. And this is where the brands are, and this is why we intervene at that level.
So what can we do? I mean, the concern about you said not volume driven, but quality driven, how to get the incentives of herdsmen, and what is the barrier towards that?
I think this is where the work of the Sustainable Fibre Alliance comes into play. Mm-hmm. One of the big selling points for brands and retailers is that they're able to say that it comes from a sustainable source. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about sustainability in our context, it's avoiding degradation of the grassland and looking at ways in which to repair it. Mm-hmm. It's avoiding bad practice in animal welfare, mm-hmm. so that we know that everything's being looked after. Mm-hmm. And it's the avoidance of use of hard chemicals that pollute the environment in processing. Mm-hmm. The Sustainable Fibre Alliance and its members recognise that there are limits on what can be done, mm-hmm. because it's a long chain of development, mm-hmm. from the actual raw fibre through to a finished garment. And often that fibre leaves the country at various stages. So it's collected by herders, and what we call greasy cashmere, disappears into China for processing. Mm-hmm. There are what you would call vertical manufacturers here in Mongolia, like Gobi, for example, mm-hmm. who are doing the whole process, mm-hmm. and therefore they can be encouraged to put sustainability at the heart of that, mm-hmm. process. Mm-hmm. But there are also the potential, and I think this is what Western markets, what international brands recognise, mm-hmm. there is potential for the production of clean fibre here in Mongolia, mm-hmm. because a lot of these international brands would like to buy the fibre directly from Mongolia. Mm-hmm. But there isn't the processes in place to do it. So it's a threefold approach, really. It's a threefold approach. And you've got work with the herders on the ground to sort of get the quality right, get the sort of the timing right, and a nice steady flow. Mm-hmm. You've got the sorting arrangements, which can sort of sort out the different colours. And then you've got the actual processing where, if you like, the real work is done, because it's what comes out of that processing that really attracts the international buyers.
You said quality. That means they come from the goat, get together, and then you said now sort them by colours.
Yes.
Why is that important?
It's important because it's one step in the process that could actually save time and reduce costs. Uh-huh. There's a cost saving to the processor, mm-hmm. if the colours that are arriving at his plant or her plant are already sorted. You can go into any processing plant in Mongolia, and the first thing you will see will be groups of workers actually sorting the different colours. Mm. The herders could do that.
Yes. And we recently had a conference in Mongolia addressing these issues. Tell us about that conference.
Well, the conference actually was our second one here in Ulaanbaatar, and we had over 200 people attending. The point of the conference was really to bring together groups of interested parties. So we had environmentalists, we had some local government, we had the brands themselves, and of course herders. It was the first time that we actually had a group of herders throughout the conference.
How many herders?
Somewhere in the region, I think, of around 50 herders.
From different Aimak? Which Aimak?
Not quite sure. I must admit, they were certainly from across the country.
Okay. Yeah. So what was the discovery for herders at this conference?
I think the herders were actually amazed how well the activities that were thought of by the brands. You know, the brands recognise the work that they do and the difficulties that they face and the challenges that they face in trying to get their product to market. I think the herders also were able to see, certainly in the follow-up to the conference where we were able to take them round, some of them round the processing plants, for some of them it was the first time they'd seen what actually happens to their fibre once it's collected. And there was a comment as we went round one of the processing plants, when they saw all of the fibres on the table being sorted, that to a person they all said, we could do that. But it was the first time, nobody had ever told them that actually you could do that.
Can you a bit elaborate about the size of production in Mongolia, producing cashmere from the goat? Then which percent goes to China for further processing? Which percent is processed inside of the country?
I don't think there are any exact figures, but it's our understanding that around 90% of harvested cashmere goes to China, either via some pre-processing, or if I may say, perhaps by other means.
So what you're saying is basically Mongolia, if provided that we have taken these issues, we have not discussed, we can have more value created not only here, but also for the final customers or for brands.
Definitely, I think it's a window. This time there's a window there for action. That if it's done in the right way, with the sort of bringing everybody at the local level on board, because I think that's important, you can really start to see that various parts of Mongolia could be almost recognised for the quality and the type of fibre that they're producing, and brands would recognise that sort of effort that was being put in to do that.
So, if the herders pay attention more to quality and sorting by color, then they will sell it more expensive.
We recognise that, and brands recognise that there is a cost in doing this.
I understand. Then the network of, say, brands are coming and buying here, they will require from the beginning this sort of thing, sorting by colors, quality, then washing, then processing, at the level of, we call it tops, right?
Yeah.
They will buy as a tops, not as a probably raw cashmere.
Yes.
So that means processing capacity of the country is to grow, to increase, so that we don't the raw cashmere coming across the border to China. Instead, it's processed here. So then it's the issue of cost. The money. How to get that optimal for herders and for brands.
Without a doubt, there is the capacity in Mongolia to do it, because we understand that there are processing plants that are currently mothballed. There would be some investment required to make that happen, and I think that probably has to come at a national level. The length of time that it would take to feed through the system is something that hasn't actually been tested. No one's done a study to see actually, well, how long would it take? What's the impact? What's the level of investment that's required? Nobody's sort of really thought about what's the potential market. Brands are certainly interested, but they have no idea what the cost is likely to be.
Will your organization Alliance will do the study?
I don't think we have the capacity, and I think it would be better if it came from an independent source, because otherwise we might be seen as having a vested interest.
Will you be able to help those independent sources?
I think we would definitely be able to help that. I would like to think that we would do that. I think we'd like to be able to help make the connection between what needs to be done here and the expectations of the brands. Certainly in terms of being able to say to our brands, there's work going on, I think this is something that would be of great interest to them.
It gives me thought that here in Mongolia, Gobi, that mostly they have been doing, it was state-owned enterprise, only enterprise monopoly before, and it is sold now to private hand. And there are several other similar, smaller factories.
Yes.
And I think it's a long time now past that we need independent research labs, certain study research institutions somehow. And with your alliance help, probably this will go on. And it brings me to the questions about the skills of people. You have been spending a time in your life a lot in skills development.
Yes, yeah.
Please tell us about why is that important and how you do that.
There are various levels of skills required in any processes, and most businesses fail because they are unable to attract the skills that they require. And I also think that part of the study, any study that was done, would also have to look at that. Also, when looking at the future of the cashmere industry, you have this economic dynamic currently in Mongolia that sees young people moving away from the countryside and coming into the city. And that could potentially produce a skills gap out in the countryside, as there are no replacements for the herding communities. The way we approach that is we've looked at different skills programs that could work here in Mongolia, including one for young herders, which we've had supported for the past 2 years by Johnson's of Elgin up at Henty. But that was based on a pilot program that we run back in 2016. And that sort of fed into that. And we've been running some form of young herder training program ever since then. We think that there is potential for that to go into the national curriculum, to basically get it in at younger level. And in fact, 1 or 2 schools, again in Henty, are looking at have added that to their course as an option.
You see, here, as you said, the economics, dynamics, what happens is that business should be sustainable, profitable, that these people find opportunity there, they stay there, make more value than rather come to Ulaanbaatar driving the old car as a taxi man. So how to get where we can trigger the process?
I think it happens in 2 ways. It's about education, because we have to educate people that there is a future for cashmere. There are modern technologies, and in particular, I was amazed when I was out in the countryside that, I see every girl I see has a satellite dish.
Yes.
So the potential for really good communications are there, and our brands recognise that, and they see it as a way of sort of being able to interact directly with local communities. But I also say about recognition, there has to be some value put to the herding way of life. There's a strong tradition, there's a history there. It's one that's a good story to tell. And even though there are areas of degradation, education again is a way of saying, look at the land. Your forefathers always did this. They knew when to move the herds. They knew when the weather was going to change. They had that picture. And there are a whole range of educational issues there. Meteorology, climate change, management of grassland, good veterinary practices. There are hosts of actual opportunities for young people that even if they don't want to work as a herder, they can add value to that supply chain by having roles in the country that do that. And I would ask the universities here in Mongolia to think about those subjects, think about what you can do to preserve your future.
Young people are running from their homes to city because they don't see this opportunity. And now it's I think probably your alliance also would be addressing an issue of why it is good for them to stay, because they keep their traditions, as you said. They are the career of that values, that they can grow that value much more than anybody else.
Correct. Yes, we totally agree. I mean, what we see is that the future of any country is in their young people. You have to make sure that you can have that good, strong base. And there are opportunities, because whilst climate change, soil degradation, they're there. But we need the young to take ownership of it and to start to look at ways of sort of mitigating what's going on.
Understand on this side, but on the other side, what's happening in Mongolia is they just keep growing goats, never pay attention how much they per head produce, Kashmir, etc. So how to get that one shifting to quality?
I think there are some initiatives that I've only recently heard of where they're talking about what I would call the balancing of goat herds, so that a local region or local governor may have, in consultation with the herders, agree that there is some sort of herd size limitations, and that basically they look at the overall demand of what the countryside is estimated to be able to produce, and then sort of work with that capacity.
This economic mechanism here is the herdsmen, if they start to feel that higher quality sorted out by color, Kashmir will sell with higher price than the otherwise.
Then, yes, and it's a reasonable assumption to make, because we would like to think that once the end product has been proven at the processing end, that any premium that was paid to that processor would filter through the supply chain back to the herder.
It's a matter of, in supply chain, of the issue of brokers.
Yes.
How to get, you talked about the brands, the final producers of goods meeting the suppliers. In between them, how to pass them.
I think this is where action in the community, action by groups, will sort of can offset that sort of hidden cost that's there, or hidden added cost that's there when you put in the collectors.
You touched the interesting issue where in given county, we call it Sum.
Yes.
In Sum, there are several teams, or bag we call it, or smaller group.
Yeah.
At that level, it's much better to sell rather than individually each herdsman.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of cooperation of all herdsmen under that hat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those selling directly. How to get this one moving? People understand, but where we can start?
Certainly, part of our SFA model in terms of how we actually interconnect with the herders on the ground is through those small collectives. We see that we get more traction that way because we're able to use our resources at that level. We can identify, or the herding community, or the herders can identify an individual who has got good standing in the community and well respected, who is able to take on board the principles that SFA are promoting, and can then take that back and convince those individuals that actually by becoming a collective, we can actually work together better.
I think your alliance is to start with concrete cases.
Yes.
Where could be kind of a case where everybody follows, finding a particular community. Do you have this sort of initiative?
We do. It's the early days at the moment. We're planning another conference here in 2021. And we would expect that at that conference we would be able to demonstrate some case studies. We thought we might be able to do it this year, but unfortunately we just couldn't get the data together to make it robust enough. We're often questioned by the scientific community as to whether we're actually, producing sustainable cashmere. What we're looking at is we're talking about best practice, getting the herders to use best practice in how they manage their land and how they look after their animals. We're not a scientific research organisation.
Yeah, so until 2021 you have 2 years, and it's a good time for selecting particular group, community of herders.
We're at a point now where we have got a critical mass of herders. It means we are able to identify those SUMs that are working really well. And it also means that we can work together on a programme of activity that will enable us to use the next 2 years as a test period, where we may be able to have results that we can share in 2021.
Sounds good. If particular best practice come, then there will be more concrete deal. Tell us about yourself. I mean, what you have been doing. What is your work?
Well, my background is quite diverse. I started off as an engineer, and I was a senior manager in a bakery as an engineer, and I sort of moved through the management scene right the way through to petrochemicals. And it was there that I actually met Una Jones, our CEO, and we talked about Mongolia, and I'd been involved in some fashion, some skills development around the fashion industry. We both got sort of enthused about it. Una was in the position to do something because she had contacts in Mongolia. But I was getting up to retiring age and was thinking, retire to Scotland, Englishman, retire to Scotland, enjoy the sort of countryside, walking and the scenery. And then Una said, would you mind being on the board of SFA? And I said, well, yeah, fine. And then about 2 years later, she said, well, we're looking for a chair. Would you mind being the chair? And I said, well, okay, I'll go with it. But, we're doing that. And I have to say, I honestly, hand on heart, I have to say, it's the best job I've ever had.
Really?
I really, really enjoy doing it. I think the Mongolian people are fabulous. They're open, they're warm, they're friendly, they're welcoming. I couldn't have a more satisfying job.
Wow. So, about that fashion industry you have been spending, what is the specifics of fashion industry? Unlike any other industry.
The fashion industry is often driven by consumer requirement. Over in the West, we've seen a lot of our manufacturing skills disappear over to China. My job when I was in the fashion industry was trying to find ways of keeping what was the best in the UK in particular. So I would work with the likes of Savile Row, for example, to come up with skills programs that would help keep young people interested. In Europe, nearly everybody wants to be a fashion designer. Nobody wants to get behind the technical side of things. And to be honest, that is the real challenge. And it's almost being replicated here in Mongolia, because with the young people coming into the city because they see a better future there, when actually there's a strong economy for Kashmir here in Mongolia, and it will rely on young people for its future.
Interesting thing you said, everybody wants to be a designer, nobody wants to put hand on the technical part. Why?
Because there's a certain kudos at being a designer. You see all the big fashion houses, the big fashion names, and they all want to be the new Stella McCartney or the new Christian Dior or whatever. They all want to do that, and they don't realise how hard it is, because to be a good fashion designer, you have to have really good technical skills. I can remember going on to a course, and the actual lecturer was critiquing some of their designs and saying, well, how would that work? And most of them had no idea. It looked pretty on paper.
It is not only, I think, in the fashion industry, in everything.
Yeah.
You need to know that process, and it is not always that easy.
No, it's not.
Even in media, writing, and everyone wants to be say, but you need to write in an interesting way. Anyway, Charles, it's such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here in Mongolia. I can't wait to come back.
I wish your alliance really making change in this important sector for this country. It is not only we talk about the values or monies or economics, but also getting back the Mongolian people to their root, and then making money and having a good living than just go around looking for something new. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
За хүн төлөвчтэй өнөөдөр манай Defacto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор энэ Тогтвортой Ноолуурын олон улсын нэгдэл гэж байгаа Alliance. Энэ байгууллагын хариуцж байгаа дарга ноён Чарлес Хабард оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.